In many countries around the world, there are stories about buried treasure. And in the lands of the Middle East, they've always been popular. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 13, Jesus told a story about buried treasure, but this time it was a parable to make people think.
The kingdom of heaven, said Jesus, is like treasure hidden in a field. Many centuries ago, during a time of war, the people were taken as prisoners, and a rich man who was running away from the enemy buried all his gold in a pot, hoping to come back later. If he was killed or taken prisoner, then the treasure would remain buried, perhaps forever, or until some fortunate person would find it. Hundreds of years went by, until one day a farm worker was in the field, and accidentally he discovered the pot. The farm worker was curious. Of course, this object might just be a piece of broken pottery thrown away many years ago. That was not unusual. But a pot which was unbroken and had been carefully sealed must contain something of interest. It could be money, some copper coins perhaps. At least he could look and see what it was. It was incredible. A fortune. It was more than he could imagine. More than a man like him could earn in a whole lifetime of work. But legally, all this belonged to the present owner of the field. If he just took the treasure, he would be a thief. There was only one answer. If he could buy the field from its present owner, then everything on the land, including the treasure, would lawfully belong to him. He must get money. He must sell what he had. It was only a little piece of land, but he was poor. It would cost him literally everything he owned. He could not explain what he was doing. He seemed to be quite mad. These were things he had worked for, but now he seemed not to care. Everything was sold for cash. At last, he had just enough money to buy the field, and fortunately the owner was quite happy to sell it. The land was his, and legally, so was the treasure. He could hardly believe it. It was all his. This man was no fool. Now people would know why he had sold literally everything just to get this piece of land. Now he could buy 100 fields if he wanted to. He was richer than he could have ever dreamed. Jesus had made his point. Some things are so important, their value outweighs everything else you have. And then he told another story. The kingdom of heaven, said Jesus, is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls. More than silver, more than gold, pearls were costly. Only the richest of the rich could afford the best, the finest pearls. Julius Caesar gave the mother of Brutus a pearl worth 6 million sesterces. Cleopatra possessed pearls worth 10 million sesterces. That was 6,000 years' wages for a working man. The merchant looking for beautiful pearls might go to many cities, and he always had a network of contacts looking for the best. This time, the merchant felt he had a good lead, but negotiating a deal could be difficult. The dealer was cautious. He knew that men would kill to obtain such a pearl as he had. The merchant must use both patience and diplomacy. To find jewelry, even fine gold jewelry, was not difficult. There were workshops which produced the most elegant gold filigree, craftsmen who could design and cut beautiful cameos. But to find a truly magnificent pearl could take a lifetime. This was the one. The pink pearls from the Red Sea were famous, but this was exceptional. This was what he had been searching for. But how much would it cost? The price was huge. It was impossible, far beyond his ability to pay. This pearl would cost him all he had. The merchant tried to bargain. Perhaps the dealer would lower the price. But the dealer would not come down, and the price was not unreasonable. At least the dealer might give him a little time to raise the money and not sell the pearl to someone else. The merchant went home. There was only one thing to do. He must sell everything, every object of value he possessed, beautiful things he had taken years to collect, each one of them a treasure, but they must be sold to gain the pearl. Nothing must stop him now. Some things had sentimental value to him. Yesterday he would never have parted with them. They were part of his life, but these things seemed like trinkets compared to the pearl. He knew the value of these things, and he knew the value of the pearl. There was no comparison. Beyond the thrill of the pearl itself, he knew what it was worth, and to stop now would be madness. At last, everything had gone. But the great pearl would be his. It cost him far more than he had expected, but the pearl itself was more than he had imagined, and the price hardly seemed to matter. This is what he had looked for all his life, and it was worth more than he had paid. He was delighted. The great pearl belonged to him. This, said Jesus, this merchant finding a pearl, or the farmer finding a treasure, is like the kingdom of heaven. It is beyond comparison. It is worth everything you have and more.
So, who paid more? The farm worker or the merchant? Well, in one sense, they paid exactly the same. It cost them all they had. And they were glad to do it. So what is this kingdom of heaven or kingdom of God represented by the treasure and the pearl? More than anything else, it means the sovereign rule of God, both now and in the future, in this life and in the life to come. For the person who is a follower of Jesus Christ, the sheer joy of being in the will of God and experiencing the control of God is far more important than anything else. And after all, what's the alternative? As Jesus himself said, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul?